It's the first week of 2021, and it's time for another edition of Insight Your Month, our monthly collection of recommendations for decision makers, for leaders, and for up-levelers. We cover books, podcasts, and something that has caught our fancy. So, welcome, Harish.
Yeah, thanks, Ramanand. Like always, this is something which is close to our hearts. So happy to share our recommendations this time as well.
Right. So let's start with our book of the month. It's called The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis. I know you've been a fan of the book and you've read it long back. I finally caught up with it last month, and in fact, I was surprised that it was so good, because I wondered what would one say about these two researchers. We've read their books. And I think a big surprise for me was learning about Amos Tversky, who I didn't know much about. So what did you take away from the book?
Yeah, I think the fact that Tversky is such a superstar, right? As a and like they say that when he's in the room, everyone knows he's the superstar. After some time, and how humble he is and how unassuming he is to start with. I think that was great. I liked how the book actually brought out the contrast in the natures of both of them, and also the drift. They explained it very well. It didn't seem like a bitter separation of sorts, but just they just drifted. We had read another book called The Greatest Duos or something. I think these two guys are up there, when it comes to the great duos of our world.
Correct. And also a glimpse into Israeli culture, education.
Yes.
I think the point about students really keeping teachers on their toes, something that we don't really see here. It's more differential here. So yeah, absolutely mind-blowing book. And I think I've read very little of Michael Lewis, so planning to redress that in 2021. So from there, let's go to our Blinkist book of the month. We read one book summary every day as part of our internal compound. Last year, we've completed 3 years on 31st December. So I think we unanimously chose The Bird Way by Jennifer Ackerman, a book about birds. So, why are we so gaga about it?
So I think this was probably the first book summary that I was reading, and when I was reading, I just kept smiling. It was so funny, the way we found out about so many of these quirks of the birds. The magpies one is just fantastic. How they can hold a grudge for years together. Personally, I've actually had a crow peck at my head once when I was 8 or 9, and again, a couple of years ago, there used to be one on our building terrace which used to try and attack me. I found the book very interesting. Also, the fact about these some of the birds of prey can be deliberate arsonists. That was a big TIL moment for me.
Correct. And I think we've heard about how some summaries don't, a lot of summaries don't do justice to the actual book, but this really whetted our appetite. I know at least one of our colleagues has already purchased it as a gift for a friend. So yeah, looks like a terrific book. Actually, another Blinkist book summary that we wanted to mention was 2030, but that gives us a trend of the month. And the trend is, so this book is about the next 10 years, what to expect on various fronts. And one trend that stood out for me was collaborative economy, sharing economy as it's also called. And in fact, it's our future stack theme of this week. So anything from about that trend that you think our listeners should know about?
Yeah, it was interesting actually this past year about collaborative consumption, like they call it in the book, right? I think March or April, there was this big question mark about collaborative consumption and the shared economy, with, the whole pandemic and surface transmission being the most important thing. But Airbnb and Uber have bounced back, Airbnb for sure. So I think how they mentioned in the summary, if done well, the collaborative consumption and shared economy has to be the way forward for all of us. So it's been an interesting bounce back for that trend this year, in my mind at least. So yeah, looking forward to more of the collaborative consumption.
Yeah, and we are part of it too, because our compounds, have subscribers, and so we've learned a little bit about managing subscriptions this year. as well as being consumers, I'm sure. So staying on trend, the big trend this year on the corporate side has been remote work, which has for us has not been a new thing. We've been doing that since 2014, and there was a lot of debate. We all participated in a lot of conversations with leaders as part of our Smartcast as well. So there was this great thread by Chris Hurd. I think he says he spoke to about 1,500 people, came up with some 30 observations, predictions for the next 10 years with respect to remote work. Did any of them stand out for you?
Yeah, I think the one thing about the focus shifting from input to output was the biggest biggest point in that thread, which I think if it moves to that, people will actually start valuing what you are doing. And I think that's where all the things that we've been talking about having a greater purpose, which is more important, and that's when you'll put in your put in your best at work, and all that actually starts coming into play. Because then you will look at what is your contribution to that greater purpose that you are talking about. And it's not just about clocking hours or addressing X number of bugs in a day, or whatever is the input metric, right? It's more about how you are contributing. I think if that happens, that will be great for everyone.
Right. I think definitely one to watch out for, and also it's going to change. I think we'll be part of that change for sure. So switching tracks from books and reading to podcasts, I think there were a few candidates for podcast of the month, the episodes. I think it was a very interesting recent collection. But I think we went for one that's close to our heart, not just because of who was featured in it, but also because of what he said. So tell us what we went for.
Yeah, so this is the Jerry Seinfeld interview on the Tim Ferriss podcast. As you said, not just because how funny he was with the answers, but also with the import of the message, right? And I think the one line that you sent to me when you had recommended me, asked me to check that out, was about how to treat the brain as a dog. And you just have to train the hell out of it, like he says. I think that's one reason, one big takeaway from that. We've been talking a lot about this, about how to create a system and making sure a system that is sustainable. It's not just about thinking that I want to do something, but it has to be followed up with a system that is going to work. He seems to have done that, like he mentioned, 4 or 5 decades of doing this. You don't realize that it's been he's been around for so long, and it has to work because of that system. And also it talks about weightlifting and that being a big reason why he thinks he's still able to give the kind of prolific output that he's turning out. So yeah.
Right. And what I found fascinating was this is someone from the creative fields, not, we've usually seen systems in the world of business and the hardcore, so-called boring, hard skills. But this is someone who's turned a creative side into a system, which has not really been talked about. We talked here about flashes of genius and so on, so which is why particularly I think he has so much to teach us about. So, this year or last year rather, we did a lot of smartcasts, and that was our contribution to the world of knowledge. So I think one recent one that we wanted to call out was a smartcast with someone who runs the Global Curiosity Institute, Stefan van Hooijdonk, who's currently in Belgium. So a lot of interesting takeaways. I think we had a very fascinating discussion about curiosity, its relevance to business. Any observations on that conversation?
Yeah, I think one big takeaway for me was how to think about this return on investment on something like curiosity, right? Why should organizations really invest in building on curiosity or developing curiosity among the team members? His answer was really interesting. I'm not going to reveal what his answer was, and I'll ensure that this has piqued the curiosity of whoever is watching this to go and check out that smartcast. But it was one of my top moments from December for sure.
Right. The episode is out on our YouTube channel and on Anchor, so do check it out. And finally, Harish, uh, every year, choose to think we experiment a lot with routines, new habits. So armed with everything that we've heard from Jerry Seinfeld and all these other figures that we draw ideas and inspiration from. Uh, what are you planning to try out this month, this year?
Yeah, so this 2021, I've set myself a slightly ambitious goal of learning about 12 different domains and 12 different companies in those domains. So I'm planning to actually do some studies around things like rare metals, and also something around these learning platforms like Coursera. So take that up as an industry or a domain, figure out what these companies should actually do in terms of strategy, and what can be the so-called black swan moment for these companies as well, what can change whatever they are planning for. And not just reading and learning about this, but I'm actually trying to, or at least planning to, put together a series of 12 essays on each of these. So that's the plan. And like how Seinfeld talks about, I'm planning to make sure that I know what I need to do for each of these 12 domains and these companies on a month by month basis. So each week there is a plan for what I read and when I actually put out something. So that's a highly ambitious plan for 2021. What about you?
Yeah, it sounds like you have a future stack kind of, personal future stack that you're trying to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought of some staying with curiosity this year. One thing I wanted to do was there's this famous line from Sherlock Holmes about you see but you do not observe, and or the other way around. But what I wanted to do was just re-examine the world I live in and look at it afresh. So there's a practice called Vuja Day, which is trying to look at something you take for granted and try and examine it afresh. So I plan to do that every day. So for instance, yesterday I happened to be at a bank and I saw they had a trophy, and it made you wonder, why is a trophy shaped that way? Why do we take it for granted? Why aren't trophies diamond shaped perhaps? So that's a practice that I plan to do, and hopefully it will open my eyes to whatever the world has around us.
Yeah, I think that's a that's a great personal project to follow for this year.
Right.